I mean, I'm not opposed to it in theory. And I may or may not have done that.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight it is Thursday, November 18th, 2021, and this is a regular, time is 6:30 p.m., and this is a regular scheduled meeting of District 191, Burnsville-Eagan-Savage School District. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight who has joined us and those watching from home. Student Representative Olson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will begin tonight with approval of tonight's agenda. I will ask for a motion for that.
So moved.
Moved by Director Hume and seconded by Director Connor. All those in favor for approval of tonight's agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any not in favor, please indicate by saying nay. Not hearing any, the motion passes unanimously. We'll then move now to open up our Student Performance and Achievement Committee, which is a committee of the whole and meets at the board table here. Tonight's topic will be to discuss World's Best Workforce and A&I, or Achievement and Integration Progress Report 2020 through 2021. Coming forward will be Amina Aftadal, our Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Miller, members of the board, Superintendent Battle. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the combined World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration Progress Report for the 2020-2021 school year. This annual report, as required by the Minnesota Department of Education, serves as a look back at last year's academic progress. Next slide. Where am I doing it? Oh, there we go. This evening I will share the goals, the results, and the strategies related to the implementation of the World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration programs. Next slide. This report combines the progress of two programs, the World's Best Workforce, indicating the 5 key areas that demonstrate the path of a successful Minnesota student from kindergarten readiness to graduation, and the Achievement Integration, a state-funded program designed to pursue racial and economic integration, student achievement, equitable opportunities, and reduce academic disparities. In some instances, the goals of the two programs intersect, and in others, the goals address separate elements unique to their purpose. Next slide. Some areas of context for you. The 2021 school year was unique in that it was a year of schooling under the peacetime emergency order during a worldwide pandemic. All students spent significant time in full distance learning. Some spent all of their time from September to June in distance learning. Students were able to return to in-person classrooms on a hybrid schedule, and with in-person instruction ranging anywhere from 75 to 50% at peak levels. With health and safety as the top priority, assessment proved to be challenging. Local assessments were administered in less than 100% standardization. State assessments required in-person administration, resulting in almost 50% of our families choosing to not participate. The ACT testing for our juniors was delayed, and assessment for advanced learning left gaps in our identification process. In addition, there is no comparison to the previous year, with the spring of 2020 halting all of our assessments local and statewide. I share this to remind you that the trends and comparisons you will see in this report are comparing schooling under ordinary circumstances to schooling under unprecedented conditions. If we start with our youngest learners, Incoming kindergartners are assessed for their readiness for kindergarten in many domains, including early literacy, numeracy, social skills, communication, self-regulation, and creative thinking. However, for the world's best workforce and achievement and integration, only one of these domains is used: pre-reading literacy skill of naming letters. This is a locally administered assessment that is delivered to students one-on-one. Knowing that students are much more than just the single assessment, this measure is an indicator of students' readiness for early literacy. In the fall of this year, 36% of students were able to meet the fall benchmark for letter naming, with the goal being 51%. The results of 36% show a significant decline and may reflect the detrimental impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on preschool attendance and programming. Next slide. This level of performance for kindergartners is also represented in the letter name results in the achievement and integration goals, which demonstrate the detrimental impacts of school under pandemic for groups that have been historically underserved. This reflects communities that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. This includes our BIPOC families, students who were eligible for free and reduced lunch programming, our Native Indigenous students, and our Latinx students. Slide. The next goal for World's Best Workforce and Achievement Integration is for all students reaching grade level reading by grade 3. Research shows that this is a key benchmark for school success in reading and academic performance seen all the way through to graduation. The results of our assessments show a significant difference in participation from 2019 to 2021. The difference being 99% participation in 2019, no assessments were administered in 2020, and a 69% participation of our third graders in 2021. The results can be seen in the statewide trend as well. They also had a lower participation, and they also saw that significant decrease in the number of grade 3 students reading at the state proficiency level. Slide. The grade 3 reading results for various demographic groups were measured with a local assessment of oral reading fluency. Again, this is administered one-on-one. This includes about a 90% participation, since the individual assessment could be administered in person and online. Again, the growth target was from spring of 2019, when students were completing a school year of 100% in-person instruction. One bright spot is the growth of grade 3 Latinx students from 17% to 25%. Slide. The performance gaps among students of color and white students saw a very small 1% decrease in decrease with questionable validity, since only 58% of students in grades 3 through 10 participated in the state reading assessment. The difference between this measurement for closing gaps and the one for reading proficiency on the previous slide is the previous slide only included grade 3 students. This one includes students at all grade levels. Disappointingly, the performance gap for students eligible for free and reduced meal programs showed a steep increase in the gap, not only in ISD 191, but statewide. Again, only half the students participated, while statewide, with a greater participation, showed an even greater increase in the gap. slide. Another goal is career and college readiness. We measure that in our district using our ACT composite scores. The ACT administration for the class of 2020 was delayed due to the pandemic, so scores were not available in our last report. We do now have the results for the class of 2020, which I'm showing you here, and the class of 2021. This shows a very minimal decrease of 0.5% over the course of the 2 years, while the average scores for the state of Minnesota remain relatively unchanged. Slide. The final goal for the world's best workforce is that all students graduate. Our goal for this over the course for the world's best workforce is that all students graduate their 4-year graduation rate at 90%. Because graduation data is reported 1 year behind, we are looking at the graduation rates for the class of 2020, graduating under the peacetime emergency with distance learning beginning in March of 2020. These students worked very hard under very difficult conditions to meet the requirements for graduation. And they celebrated their achievements as no other graduates have ever had to do before. The overall graduation rate for Burnsville High School did not reach the goal of 90%, and some students struggled to meet the target with an 85% rate for 4-year graduation. I'd love to say that the picture I'm showing you here is the class of 2020, but because of the health and safety requirements, the class of 2020 was unable to gather as a whole group to celebrate their graduation. Slide. Looking at 4-year graduation rates for both Burnsville High School and Boz show very different outcomes. This is to recognize that Boz serves students working to not only meet their 4-year graduation rate, but also students who continue to pursue their high school diploma and require additional time. These 5- and 6-year graduation rates tell the story of perseverance of many students served by the Boz staff in a very personalized way. Slide. For additional context with understanding the complexities of graduation numbers, I feel it is helpful to see the data for students who are continuing to work toward graduation. This slide shows the comparisons of Boz, Burnsville High School, and the state, not only for their 4-year graduation rate, but also for the percentage of students who are committed to continuing and enrolling for their 5- and 6-year attainment, as well as the dropout percentages and the unknown, students who have left the system and they are unable to be located. I think the numbers speak for themselves, and they show that there is a strong commitment in our district to serve students who are asking for more support and more time to earn their high school diploma. Next slide. When we look at achievement and integration for the goal there for all students to graduate, we look a little bit deeper into specific demographic groups. The A&I goals are intended to address disparities of some student groups and have shown mixed results. We do continue in 191 to show strong results for our Black and African American students. They do meet the 4-year graduation rate, exceeding not only our original achievement and integration plan goal, but also exceeding the expectations of the statewide graduation rates. However, our Latinx students last year, or in 2019, were so close to meeting the 72% 4-year graduation rate. It was very disappointing to see how impacted that community was by the pandemic circumstances and the loss of ground for our graduating seniors. And then again, with very small numbers, the school struggled to connect and support our Native and Indigenous students in our community. Knowing that we have such a small number, working to continue to build our Native and Indigenous programming to provide personalized and individualized support for those students to graduate. Next slide. I recognize that it is difficult to hear the story of how emergency pandemic conditions impacted so many of our learners in a negative way. It is especially difficult knowing the energy and effort that building staff have invested in creating safe environments, both for in-person and virtually, and working first and foremost to build relationships and connections with each and every student. The outstanding level of commitment that staff made in developing instruction adapted for students they saw in person only half the time. Last year, I shared our winter data for our elementary students that showed them maintaining their performance levels in almost all cases. And the ongoing shifts of learning models, hybrid scheduling, and the relative isolation of the small pods have taken their toll from the winter to the spring. Despite this difficult story, I want to highlight that 191 utilized all resources available to respond to the needs of students. In the current school year, COVID relief and recovery resources, as well as achievement and integration resources, are focused on maintaining and strengthening our services to all students. For example, we continue with our AVID programming for secondary, using those strategies and tools for building relational capacity in our secondary classrooms. It also focuses on developing high rigor and coursework and thinking for all of our students. We continued the implementation of second step, which is our social emotional curriculum, standardized throughout the district for students K through 8. This curriculum includes relationships, friendships, regulation and identification of their own emotions, resolving conflicts, and various other skills that really do help students create a community in the classroom. We also have extended the work of our tireless cultural liaisons to increase our family engagement through Fire Academy this year. Extending also the translation services and efforts of the district in order to better communicate with families and provide more equitable opportunities for families to continue to advocate and support their children. We also this year have worked to maintain the rigorous coursework, not only through the AVID, but also providing support and opportunities for concurrent enrollment, college in the schools, and advanced placement. We also have implemented what we did in a small amount last year through distance learning, but also now advanced learning opportunities for all elementary students. The CPSS, or Cultural Proficient School Systems for Instruction, is the professional development throughout this year for all staff that establishes specific indicators for more culturally proficient classrooms. And this includes allowing for more student voice, increasing representation in the curriculum, and a clear focus on how to support multilingual learners in the general classroom, which the board heard an excellent report from earlier this year. We also have continued to expand our CPSS training for leaders in instructional and non-instructional departments, ensuring that we continue to have culturally proficient school system, not just instruction. We have increased the support and opportunity for credit recovery at the high school. We have focused on the foundational literacy skills that our assessments are showing are needed by our students at all grade levels in elementary. And this includes accessing the resources of ProPay using the collaborative team time established by ProPay and supported by the continuous improvement coaches. And finally, looking at how we can better utilize the block schedule at our middle school to provide ongoing enrichment and intervention for our students in reading and math. On top of all of these things, we continue to move through with our implementation of curriculum review, and we'll be looking at the pilot implementation for math in K-5 and science in middle school and high school. There are so many other stories of the work that we are doing here in this district to respond to the different needs, social, emotional, and academic, for our students, and that this programming is happening to respond to this very, very difficult data story. The teachers and staff at each and every site recognizes the high needs of students, both social, emotional, and academic, moving through this extremely challenging time of recentering. They are doing everything, using every resource and applying every instructional and relational tool to show how they can care for their students, and they should be applauded for their work. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open it up now for questions and comments by board members. Director Ward, go ahead, please.
I realize that, this is a huge undertaking, and I applaud everyone in our district that's worked so hard to achieve what we have, and it's going to be an ongoing process. And I definitely think, we're doing the best we can, but I guess my questions are around how do we approach, different specific cultural needs, like, and make sure that our support services are geared towards those? And what are we doing to see how we can expand that? Because I know that some of our cultural liaisons are pushed towards, maybe their breaking points by having a lot of those students that are of those different cultural backgrounds going to them for a lot of different things. How can we spread that out a little more by finding additional services for those specific, cultures to go to, so that maybe the burden isn't so heavy on them? Because I feel like there's other resources in the community maybe that we're maybe not seeing or utilizing.
Well, I can give one example, and that is by expanding the positions to full-time district translators, we take some of that burden off of our site building liaisons to do those translations. It also, by identifying those positions and that work being full-time translation, allows us to provide more information that's automatically translated and provided to these multilingual communities, so that they have a lesser need to work through the cultural liaisons, because that information is being provided to them on the front end and being much more proactive with that. And one of the things that I heard very clearly last year was just that burden of translation, and how do we get all of the information out to parents as we were changing models and all of those other types of things. And I feel as though that was one of the key responses, is to take that burden off of the cultural liaisons, to put it on these full-time positions, so that those folks can then go back to some of the other kind of engagement and mediating kind of activities. So that is one thing that we wanted to make sure that we do.
Director Word, Chair Miller, directors of the board, I'd like to add a few more examples.
So you're aware we did add through our community education the community connectors. And so we have two, Etika Antaveras and Hamdi Duad. And so they have been working closely with the cultural liaisons to see how they can better support. Also, I participated in a meeting with them, and Dakota County has a new staff member. Primary role is to expand services to K-12 schools. And so we will be working with that Dakota County person also, the community connectors as well. And also, I'd like to highlight a partnership that's more culturally specific, MIGACY. Did you want to share a little bit about MIGACY?
Sure. So MIGACY is an organization in the Twin Cities that supports our Native and Indigenous cultural work. We have had a partnership with them for the last year and again this year to provide services to our Native and Indigenous students. We also, last year, were able to hire a full-time Indigenous support coordinator or liaison for our Native programming, showing an amazing increase in connections with our families in this community. I'm so excited to be able to report our graduation numbers for our Indigenous students for next year because of the kind of personalized support and family outreach that Rebecca Mousseau has been able to do with Natives students in 11th and 12th grade, and she continues to operate as a member of the success teams in the high school.
Thank you. That's the kind of things I was wanting to hear about. So thank you very much for providing those details.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Dr. Connor.
And I do applaud all of our educational staff as well as the, your staff for all the hard work they do. And I'm seeing results, and I think it's awesome as we're pushing forward through this COVID time. And but I was wondering too, what is block scheduling? I don't know what that is.
Sure. So as we looked at the schedule and revisited the schedule for our middle school students, 2 years ago, students had 8 periods during the day, and so students transitioned 8 times in one school day. What we really looked at was how do we reduce those transitions for students and be able to capture some of that instructional time in a very positive way to improve student climate and student and student stamina, actually, to be honest. And so the principals at the middle schools proposed building a different kind of schedule. And so for the core classes, math, science, social studies, and language arts, the class periods are 90 minutes long. Now, the 90 minutes is intended to do 2 things. First, it is a regular 45-minute class period of direct instruction, group work, those types of things. The remaining time is used for grouping and regrouping students, for intervention, for enrichment, for AVID, for a variety of different kinds of opportunities that are related to math and language arts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Yes, Darrell.
Thank you. Dovetailing on Director Connor's question with the block scheduling and understanding, of course, that it was the middle school principals that recommended it for middle school. I remember back during COVID, we used block scheduling at secondary 6 through 12. And I'm wondering, if it works well for middle school, what discussions, what plans might we be having, knowing that it is a successful way to teach our students, and understanding scheduling at the high school is an entirely different beast.
Right. I do want to be very clear that the middle school principals led a teacher task force that examined the cost, the staffing, the organizational structures, all of those kinds of things. And this was one of the recommendations that came out of that. And the middle school principals were very committed to responding to the needs of middle school students who definitely need fewer transitions, just simply because of the fact that at that age, regulation becomes an important piece of how they manage their changes and interactions with each other. As a middle school teacher for 10 years, I just want to know I love those kids, and they really need assistance in learning how to regulate themselves. That being said, to remember that the block schedule does not fit for every content area. We continue to have 45, 43-minute class periods for art, family and consumer science, Phi-Ed, many of the electives. And that allows us a lot of flexibility, so students have multiple choices of electives and exploratory opportunities. At the high school, it is the complexities of the schedule and the nature of semester versus full year classes, and that the nature of semester classes really does create that barrier for many times some successful block scheduling and instruction. So because a student may have one semester of, say, French in the fall, and then not have the opportunity to come back to the next level of French for a whole nother 12 months, rather than being consecutive. So there tends to be some barriers along the way. And with our, just the numerous opportunities in the Pathways program, we want to make sure that we don't limit opportunities for students to take some of those singleton courses.
Got it. Thank you. Well, just a couple comments. I really appreciated the context that you provided up front and throughout. Obviously, we can't ignore the fact that we have been through and continue to live through a pandemic. And I think that's going to be important as we move farther down the road to remember these are the two blip years where we really need to remember that everybody was working as hard as they could. And successes maybe looked a little different. So I really appreciated that. And also just was proud to see the 4-year graduation rate, because it is flat. And that means we maintained despite everything. And I think that we should really, pat ourselves on the back and, again, as others have mentioned, congratulate our team and our staff for working so very hard through the pandemic. And again, I know you mentioned it was such a great report because you really did cover quite a bit. And just reminding people that, the COVID funding, the ESSER funding that we're getting, that really, we are targeting that funding very specifically at our elementary kids, making sure, and also summer learning and class sizes and exactly the way we need to. And I think it's important for our community and for our families to know that despite everything, we are using that additional funding to the best of our ability. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
Building on what you asked a little bit. So even in a pre-COVID world, if any of us can remember that at this point, standardized tests were often imprecise, imperfect, incomplete measure of a student's abilities, even prior to COVID. And our results were always a challenge, even pre-COVID. So certainly that, it's not surprising that it continues to be a significant challenge. But given the investments that we've made, as Director Alt mentioned, with some of the ESSER funds and other funds for this year, what are you expecting or hoping for between now and the end of this current school year as far as starting to rebuild some of that learning loss?
So some of the key indicators that we really are watching very closely, because we've invested into a math block schedule at the middle school, and as well as using some of the relief and recovery funds to include 2 math intervention specialists at the middle school to develop those intervention programs and provide those. We're really looking for some positive results with our middle school math. We are also looking for key indicators for K through 3 fluency in reading. The phonics measurements are going to be very, very important because that is such a foundational skill. And working with the collaborative teams from ProPay and the CICs to really focus on examining that data and completing formative assessments. Those are 2 areas for sure that we really are taking a look at. The other one is that the relief and recovery funds have been focused on our credit recovery too at the high school, as well as just the tremendous amount of work that the high school has done with developing success teams and working on the 8th grade to 9th grade transition to make sure that students in 9th and 10th grade who were hybrid or full distance learning last year are getting the acclimated to the high school and the responsibilities of earning credit. So the other key indicator will be credits earned, and students who this year will then meet the 4-year graduation rates. So those are 3 kind of really key indicators where we saw needs and concerns, and we really wanted to take a really close look at those 3 things. So those are 3 metrics that I'm hoping I will be able to share some really good results with you at the end of the school year.
Okay, great. Then one more question. More of a comment, I guess. It would be helpful next year when we're sitting here, hopefully a year from now, without masks, post-COVID. If when we get this next report, if it had kind of the same numbers that we had this year, kind of the pre-COVID,
Sure.
mid-COVID, and then hopefully next year's number will be as we are recovering from COVID, just so we can kind of see both where we are compared to this past year, as well as where are we compared to pre-COVID numbers.
Great.
So just a thought.
Yep, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
Just one. With the numbers related to the pandemic or the adjustments down, but we also had the pre-COVID goals. Are we looking at maybe adjusting or modifying any of those goals at this time?
Next year will be the 3rd year of the 3-year plan. So while we complete that year, it is also a year of building the next 3-year plan. And that will come into play as we look at this new kind of baseline data and set new goals for us in those areas. That's a good question.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead if you'd like, Director.
No, I was just piggybacking on what, excuse me, Director Alt said, that it's a really comprehensive report, and thank you for that.
So if we look at slide 6 for a moment, the reading proficiency MCA, I think I appreciate all the conversation about the environment we're in. The thing about COVID is it wasn't limited to our district, and the drop here was larger than the statewide, and I understand statewide frankly is probably a poor assessment, but it's what we have available. But, so I want to be caught into that, and I want to keep that in front of us. I am curious about the participation number. Can you unpack that, because wasn't aware that there was much choice in taking the MCAs, for instance. So there must be something other than choice driving that.
It is choice because the state assessments are required to be done in person, and we had over 30% of our students in full virtual learning last year. Those parents had to agree to have their students sit in and take tests in person after they had already decided to have their student full virtual learning. And many parents said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And that is 100% their right. Any parent who said yes, we provided every resource for them, transportation, meals, for them to come into a very safe environment at each site to participate in the testing. But many of our families simply said they would prefer not to have their child come in person.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And, just to drive to a maybe slightly uncomfortable point, though, that in our district, with the wide disparity of availability to options in the home, I think it's probably a generalization to say, though, the ones that were able to stay home and stay away and not participate were probably the ones that maybe would have helped raise our test scores overall, just based on the availability of their options at home and such. So,
If I could just comment on that, just to recognize that of the 30% of our students who are in distance learning, more than half of them were students of color, and a significant portion of them were also our multilingual learners.
yeah, that's fair. It's not even, and I appreciate that, but not even so much a racial line for me. It's, the household has the capacity to have kids home and provide a learning environment for them, or a safe environment during the day, which would maybe by extension indicate that they have time to do homework in the evening with them, or read to them, or provide additional learning opportunities. But regardless, it's unfortunate. I do think that the connection of the participation number is probably going to significantly change our numbers in the
Yeah.
future. So, I also curious about on the high school graduation numbers. The dropout, can you talk a little bit about what that is indicative of?
Sure. The dropout numbers, they represent students who have reached the mandatory age of compulsory education and have chosen to no longer enroll in our district or in any school district or in any alternative program.
So they have to have aged out to reach that number, not just chose to say, they didn't raise their hand and say, there's no chance I'm coming back, I'm done at 18 or 19. They had to age out to get there, right?
Well, at age 18 and 19, they most certainly can.
So then they could option to drop out. It also, it's not just age out. Okay. I'm just curious why we wouldn't, do we make an attempt to move, because I see the number, I know there's a larger student body, so an N value in the BHS, but the number, and so therefore the percentage is actually lower, but 25 students dropped out at the high school. I'm curious if we're making a connection to move them, try to get them to BOZ, which would open more doors for, learning beyond the high. I imagine it's very difficult for someone who's now no longer 17 or 18 to come back to the high school and finish up their, I know we have the options available, but it might be easier way through BOZ. Do we isolate those people and try to get them to come to BOZ instead?
We do, and that's why you see that 56 students who are continuing, most of them are continuing on at BOZ.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little, all
You
right.
kind of see that flow, and that the connections that, the collaboration that the administration and counseling staff have from BOZ and BHS is actually very close, and that they want students to be able to flow back and forth as students meet whatever their academic goals are. And yes, most certainly, we try to keep as clear of an on-ramp into BOZ for students rather than letting them drop out.
Okay.
Just a
Yes.
clarification to that, though. Of the 25, if there was a student who formally dropped out but would want to come back and go into BOZ, is there an attempt to communicate that option? I think it's maybe what you're asking.
I can't speak to what that process is, but students are always welcome to enroll in BOZ or any other alternative program available to them.
Okay.
So-
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Is BOZ then like a half school, half work program?
They have work experience program available there. And so some students choose that option. Other students attend academic classes full-time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much for your report tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes tonight's open committee of the whole for student performance and achievement, and we'll now move to the information component of our meeting, beginning with a report about fundraising. Bringing this forward will be Lisa Ryder, Executive Director of Business Services. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Miller, Directors of the Board, Superintendent Dr. Battle. Tonight is a report on fundraising for our Policy 511, which is student fundraising, was adopted in October of 2020. And we took a little bit of time to build up a form and process for that information to be captured and gathered for reporting purposes as well as just tracking and monitoring. So what you see before you today is a report that is accumulating the information from its inception, which we pulled reports from July of 2020. And we've utilized an e-commerce system within our programming that allows many people to be able to pay for various different fundraising opportunities or even donations via credit card. And that allows online purchase of that and has made a lot of ease for those interested in participating. This report then is also augmented by any information we also had with regard to checks or cash that had been received in the school sites too. So the report that you see incorporates the fundraising forms that were received for this school year and calls out the activity, the type of fundraising, the timing, the purpose, and the results of that fundraising. The above information may overlap with some of the information that the board sees on the donations report because it is challenging for us to discern between donations and fundraisers at times. And so just for purposes of this conversation, you know, we're defining fundraisers when we communicate to our public a call for donations or a participation in a fundraiser for a particular purpose. So when that's the case, we're considering that a fundraiser. If I see a deposit for a certain dollar amount, but it's not really attached to a call for that donation, then it's going to show up in the donation report. This is a new process, so we're still working out the kinks, but it is, I think, a very good first step for us as we develop this even further moving forward. This report will come to you in November and May of each year. It will not likely align exactly to our fiscal year because of the timing there, but it will give you a sense of what types of fundraisers we are currently running and have been. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Ryder. Any questions or comments from board members?
I just have one, as usual, nitpicky thing. It says the report ran from July 2020 through October of 2021, but the report looks like everything is from this fall. So does
Yeah.
that mean nothing, there was no
So,
money raised from July 2020?
no, you will note that on the very last item, the 2020 meal deal fundraiser that was conducted by Community Education Senior Center, that did start in 2020, July of 2020.
That's the only one, though.
That's the only one. The others are, so our fundraising report that we put out for our school sites to utilize, we trained on that this fall. So you're seeing those forms being implemented and utilized now for this school year, but they were not necessarily out there the previous year.
Okay.
However, as we got the word out, community education, they had the information, and so we pulled that data for you so you could kind of see what that dollar amount. It's an impressive amount for a program that, you know, during COVID, that provided an opportunity for us to be able to serve families when they most need it on those holidays.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you. I think this is people should take a moment and read through it. It's a wonderful example of the way our community comes together and helps each other out. I think it's a great idea we're running this. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda would be to discuss have a update on the strategic plan. Dr. Battle, Superintendent, and Aaron Tinkelberg, Director of Communications.
Thank you, Chair Miller and directors of the board. In September 2020, our district began a process to update its strategic roadmap. The roadmap includes the district's mission, vision, values, and strategic directions. It was originally adopted in 2015. Our roadmap establishes the overarching direction for our district. It serves as the basis for all the work done in the district and provides a measuring stick for success. Through our process launched in 2020, it was decided to not change the district mission: each student future ready, community strong. Also, the board adopted changes to our vision and core values. Tonight, Aaron Tinklenberg and I will present an update regarding the development of the strategic directions. Our approach to developing the directions is different from the previous approach. It includes identification of barriers to achieve our mission and vision and to live our core values. The directions we develop will inform action plans and inform budget development for fiscal year 23 through the end of the new strategic roadmap. Just to briefly share an example about how the strategic roadmap informs what is happening in our schools, I offer this following example. You may recall one of the previous strategic directions was to close gaps and raise achievement for all students. We recognized that gifted and talented students are enrolled across our sites. This board declared that we will become a pre-K-12 pathways district, and through that process, you eliminated magnet schools. You really chose to remove a barrier to that direction of closing gaps by not serving or improving or supporting the talent development of every child within our district. And we aligned our budget decisions to that board direction. And so for year one of our pathways implementation, we identified having advanced learning specialists to support students across our elementary sites. And so that gives you a little preview of what we hope will happen after we finish our strategic directions, have action plans, and align it to our budget, so it makes a real difference for the students in our classrooms. And so now I'll turn it over to Aaron Tinklenberg for the formal presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Battle, Chair Miller, and members of the board. As Dr. Battle said, just here to provide a little bit of an update on where we're at, where we've been really, and what we've done so far, what we're planning next, and what's down the road. So as Dr. Battle mentioned, we spent last year working on updating our vision and values. We started with really took the entire year really to work through that, and we started with community input. That was part of what informed the decision not to address or change the mission of the district in any way. It included small group conversations, reactions, revisions, feedback throughout the year. And what we developed, I think, really reflects, and this board mentioned as much earlier in the year as well, really reflects who we are as a district. They're unique. So this new vision statement is different than what we had before. It's very aspirational and really communicates our purpose, the change that we intend to make in the world. And the board adopted that on May 27th of this past year. At the same time, you adopted the new core values for our school district. And again, these express what we believe and stand for in District 191. They're probably different than what you'll see in a lot of other school districts, and regardless, they reflect who we are and our values as a district. Those core values being caring community, cultural proficiency, future readiness, inclusive partnership, and student agency. So I want to talk a little bit, and again, Dr. Battle touched on this, about strategic directions. We took a different approach to our vision and to our values last year than what we had previously. And we're doing a similar change for our strategic directions. As Dr. Battle mentioned, these new strategic directions will really be aimed at addressing the barriers that prevent us from achieving our vision. So it's not a specific outcome that we're talking about, where closing the achievement gaps is an outcome that we want. It doesn't really tell you how that you're going to get there. So these strategic directions will be a little bit more about how to address those barriers that are keeping us from getting where we want to go. And in that way, they're grounded in reality, and they really are strategic in nature. And of course, they will be consistent with the directions that the board has already given the district in terms of being a Pathways K-12 district, approving our achievement and integration plan, and of course, meeting the requirements of the world's best workforce plan from the state. In terms of what we've done so far, we did have a meeting, a workshop back in August to work on identifying the underlying barriers. The group that met in August was representative staff group to help us do that work. It included teachers, it included district level staff. It is entirely internal staff members, in part because we feel like this is our work, the work that we need to do. The community really helped us set the direction, the vision for the future, and our core values. And as we go about deciding how to achieve that vision, we're relying on the experts within the district to come up with those plans. We did do that work. We had really robust conversations, I think really good conversations, but by the time we got to the end of the afternoon, into the evening really, we ended up needing more time to come back together as a large group, discuss what we had developed, and work on identifying those final strategic directions. And so right now, it's just taking longer than we'd like, and we'll have to pull together this group again in the future. I'll talk a little bit about how that'll go. But obviously, as we start a school year, especially under the current circumstances, it's not that easy to just grab 25, 30 staff members and find an afternoon to do 4 or 5 hours worth of work. So what's next? What we've decided to do to finish that work is to start with an online discussion. So this is a way to get everybody together without having to actually get together physically. And over the next couple of weeks, review and react to that work that we did back in August. And then conclude that work probably in mid-December with a live discussion, either virtual or in person, depending on when everybody's available, in order to finalize some draft strategic directions. Those will be reviewed by the superintendent's leadership team and then brought to the board for review and hopefully eventually adoption in January. That's the strategic directions and kind of where we are and where we're headed and what'll be coming next. The outcome of one of the next steps, I should say, after the strategic directions will be something that I talked about last year, almost at about this time last year, which is the development of a strategic roadmap or dashboard. Which would show our progress on our strategic directions, provide accountability to ourselves and our community, and communicate our priorities and values to prospective parents. We heard a lot of numbers tonight from Amina, and those kind of are some of the things that would be in the dashboard, obviously aligned with World's Best Workforce, probably in particular, graduation rates and things like that. But the dashboard might also include other measures of our priorities as a district. So community engagement, cultural proficiency, all of the values and the strategic directions. And they'll really reflect that strategic approach for the district. And that's what's down the pike. And this is just an example, a draft example of what that might look like based on our current strategic directions, not necessarily updated to our future strategic directions. And that's an update of where we're at and where we're headed in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Dr. Earl, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward, Dr. Battle and Aaron. Appreciate knowing where we are and all of the staff time and efforts from a broad group. I know when I was first on the board, the process, as you mentioned, was very different. And speaking for myself, I feel greatly reassured by all the voices that have been brought into this process from start to finish. I know that, you covered many of them, the students, the families, the staff. It's a really solid effort, in my opinion, and, I can't appreciate enough that it's not coming out of a silo, it's coming out of our community and our school community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Additional comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. We will now move to receive an update about District 191's efforts to implement COVID-19 related educational and public health guidance issued by the MDE and the MDH respectively. Leading us tonight on this, Dr. Teresa Battle, Superintendent. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Miller and directors of the board. I want to acknowledge the negative impact of COVID-19 for our students, families, and staff. We hoped we might return to some sense of normal this fall. It has been anything but normal. It has been a very challenging time. Yet, I'm incredibly proud and grateful for students, families, staff, and this board. We have remained steadfast in our priority of putting safety first and doing what is best for students. I want to let you know that all of the efforts of staff, all of the work of our students, flexibility, dedication, are making a real and important difference for our students and each other. I thank you for giving each other grace, for just persisting through this pandemic. And so the report we have for you tonight is very sobering. And so joining me tonight will be our lead licensed school nurse, Bernie Bean, and then Lisa Ryder will give an operational update. So first, I'm going to start off with some information from Minnesota Department of Health and Minnesota Department of Education. The pediatric confirmed COVID-19 cases are surging. In a presentation to superintendents, Dan Huff, Assistant Commissioner of Minnesota Department of Health, shared that cases in children 5 to 11-year-olds have surpassed all previous peaks. Cases in our children are driving cases throughout Minnesota. Hospital capacity is at a crisis level. This week, Minnesota Department of Health Commissioner Jan Malcolm and Sheldon Berkowitz, the president of the Minnesota chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, sent a letter to superintendents and school board members. In the letter, both stated the following: the past 19 months have been enormously challenging for our schools, our families, and our children. We are grateful for your leadership and resiliency during these trying times and want to support you in making this a successful school year. We are writing today to express our concern with the high cases of COVID-19 in Minnesota school children. While children are generally less impacted by COVID-19 than adults, they are still at risk for severe disease, hospitalization, and death. About 1 in every 100 children with COVID-19 ends up in the hospital. Further, some children experience ongoing symptoms for a prolonged period after acute infection, even if that infection has been mild. This is termed long COVID. Since school started this fall, we have seen an alarming rise in childhood cases and a subsequent rise in hospitalized children and children admitted into intensive care, and sadly, 1 student has died. Additionally, 8 Minnesota school staff have become infected and died of COVID since school began this fall. Minnesota students benefit from in-person learning and enabling in-person instruction as safely as possible for the 2021-22 school year. For all students, this is a priority. However, without effective disease mitigation strategies in place, children and school staff are being put at undue risk. Both Jan Malcolm and Dr. Berkowitz recommended layered mitigation strategies. These should sound familiar to you. Their letter said this includes promoting vaccinations for any eligible teachers, staff, and parents, and children 5 years of age or older, universal masking, physical distancing, stay at home when sick, screening and testing, ventilation, contact tracing, and quarantine. Notifying MDH when we have confirmed cases in schools, and teaching appropriate hand washing and respiratory etiquette, and cleaning and disinfecting surfaces. You as a board and our community know we have been following these mitigation strategies, and our staff continues to monitor and adjust their strategies as we get confirmed cases. I must tell you, I am exhausted from COVID. And a few days ago, my staff, they just had to lift me up to say, we have to continue. It's very hard. I wish I could take this mask off now. And so we just have to persist and continue with our priority. And now I'll turn it over to Bernadine.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Good evening, Chair Miller and Board of Directors. Our state and community continues to see a high level of transmission. Statewide, the positivity is 10.5%, and the breakthrough infection rate has increased from 2% last week to 2.2% this week. The most recent Minnesota data in the school-age population, particularly the 10 to 19-year-olds, the positivity rate is over 10%. In Dakota County, 19.5% of new cases this week were in kids under 12. In Dakota County, the majority of the hospitalizations continued to be in people 40 and older. However, this week, 20% of the new hospitalizations were in people under 40. Statewide numbers released today indicate close to 30 deaths. In Dakota County, 4 deaths have been reported this week. Positive cases in Minnesota for the last 24 hours is near 5,000 cases. Minnesota has the highest 7-day case rate in the United States, and all but one county are in a high transmission category. The 7-day case rate for Dakota County currently is 509. Last week it was 325. Positivity for today per CDC for Dakota County is 12.18%. For Scott County, the case rate number per CDC is 785. Last week it was 389. The positivity rate is 15.57%. For District 191, aggregately throughout this school year, we have been informed of 44 positive cases among staff, with 37 cases resulting in a case investigation due to being infectious in our building. Last week, those positive cases were at 32. For students, during the same time frame, we have been informed of 176 positive cases, and 125 of those resulted in an investigation. Last week, that total was 150 for positive cases. In recent investigations, the health service team 2 weeks ago completed 21 case investigations. Last week, we completed 30. This week, so far, we have completed 37 case investigations. At the end of last week, 446 students were out due to the effects of COVID. The prior week, it was 194. The rise in COVID cases is concerning for our community. This is the time to double down on our mitigation strategies and for each of us to be COVID smart. In other words, like Dr. Battle said, we need to focus back on the basics: good hand washing, good mask wearing, physical distancing, vaccinations, and testing. Most importantly, stay home if you are sick. COVID doesn't come with the purple rash that we can easily identify. When we're in high transmission, even a minor symptom should cause us to pause and wonder, is it COVID, and seek advice. So on to saliva screening. This week, the staff that wanted to participate in a saliva screening were given that opportunity. The second screening will be conducted on December 1st. And at that time, we will have depleted our last year's supply of vault screening kits. We are in the final stages of planning a partnership with the Midwest Coordination Center Testing, which is one of the approved molecular testing resources by MDE. This program will provide an opportunity for staff to participate in a weekly self-nasal swab screening program in their building. It'll be very similar to the saliva screening program that we had last year, but it will be a self-nasal swabbing. For student testing, we continue to be fortunate to have the partnership with Dakota Child and Family Clinic. They too are seeing an uptick in referrals from school nurses for testing for students. Typically, they would see 4 to 5 students a day. This week, well, as of yesterday, they had already seen 32 students from District 191. So what is the hope in the horizon? By mid-December, we will have a chunk of students, 5 to 11, who will be fully vaccinated. And we are hopeful that that will start to impact the ongoing spread for our students. Also this week, Minnesota is having discussions talking about boosters for all, so that would increase the protection that we have against breakthrough infection. Today, we had our first vaccination clinic for students 5 to 11 at Eagle Ridge. 289 students were registered as of 5 o'clock to go through that clinic. And I did go make a site visit, and it was very well organized. Kids were happy, families were happy. They were moving along the line very nicely. We have our Burnsville High School is going to be hosting a clinic through MDH, and that will be November 29th. They will have 360 slots open for that. We are finishing the registration so that we can push that out through social media. And then in December, we have submitted a request for another clinic hosted by MDH. And this clinic would be on a Sunday, and it would be for all students to receive vaccination if want to. And I do want to just reiterate that parents do need to be present and give permission for their child to receive these vaccinations. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Ryder for an operations report.
Thank you. To begin, I'm going to talk a little bit about our staffing shortages within our operational department. I would encourage that we have an absolutely phenomenal team here at 191, and anyone who may be interested in working in our child care, food and nutrition, custodial services, I encourage you to go ahead and look at our website under the careers, because there's plenty of opportunity there. And so we're looking forward to anyone newly interested in applying. Additionally, we're very grateful to our transportation contractor, Schmidt & Sons, who, despite the driver shortage that they are experiencing, has been extremely supportive of our needs. We have been very fortunate in the services that they have been providing to us, and it continues to be a challenge. So we will continue to monitor that as we work through the remainder of the year. Regarding supply shortages, I want to talk a little bit about that for food nutrition. Through social media, we've heard of several districts that were dropped by their primary distributor, and we were hearing about this happening mostly in the northeastern and southeastern part of the states. But last month, we started hearing about 55 districts near the Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota border, where they were dropped by their prime distributor out of Nebraska. So there has been a smaller district in Northern Metro and one in Jackson, Minnesota that has also been dropped in September. We believe our primary distributor, Upper Lakes Foods from Cloquet, Minnesota, is in it for the long haul, and they're doing the very best that they can to support schools. They are experiencing a shortage of employees, and we are feeling the repercussions of that by seeing deliveries that are arriving basically late, but at least they're arriving. Our main distributor for our a la carte items has closed permanently last summer. Another company has reached out to schools to fill that void, but we have not necessarily taken advantage of that at this time, just simply due to the fact that we're not selling very much a la carte right now. We're focusing on the main meals. On a weekly basis, there's many things that come shorted, so we might order it, but it just doesn't come in the delivery. And so we're substituting a number of food items. So menus are changing on us on a last-minute notice. There are nationwide shortages on some of the popular chicken and egg products, and we are finding substitutions. We have seen some price increases. However, we also know that we have a few purchasing groups that we have participated in that basically allowed us to lock some prices in. So at this point in time, we're in okay shape, but we do anticipate that these prices will increase as those timelines expire and we have to redo our quotes and bids. So that's an update of our operational challenges at this time. Thank you.
That concludes our report.
Thank you. Questions or comments from board members? No questions? All right. Go ahead, Director Earl.
I'm almost speechless. This definitely was a very sobering report. I'm troubled. I'm worried. I know that staff is doing the best that they can, and given everything from, mitigation to the operational report, we want to do what's right for our students and for our families, and it's getting hard. And I guess, I don't know, I need time to digest this, but I would like to encourage this board to think about how we are supporting our staff, how we're supporting our families and our students. When is a time for us to change what our guidance to Dr. Battle and her team? I don't know that this is the time, but I'm definitely worried. And I know that having students in person is always the best. I'm also not sure that sending them home is necessarily a good solution either and would protect them. There are just so many variables. So I just wanted to put that out there for folks to think about, and thank you for letting me share.
Cool. Anybody else? Yes, Director Ward.
Well, kind of to piggyback off that, and I know it's maybe hard we don't have a crystal ball, but I don't know, Bernie, if you are able to look at like anything from last year that maybe could coincide with what could happen this year. I know now we could factor in possibly the kids getting vaccinated and looking at data about when things kind of peak as far as like the flu, and where did we see like rises as far as during the last school year, as opposed to what we could is there a way to predict what we could possibly see happen in the next couple of months, and how to factor in the kids getting vaccinated? I don't know if that's a possibility at all.
Yeah, that's a big question. What I do know from talking to Dakota County today, the numbers that they are seeing at this time are similar to last year at this time. But we do have vaccination this year, and we have more testing opportunities. So with that, we still need to be hopeful, right? That our district has embraced mitigation. We have been the first to do many hard things to keep our kids safe, and that is helping us. And we will continue to do that because, as you said, in-person learning is the best for kids. However, we have to balance that, and we have to really look at what is the best at that time. Not every investigation is the same, or how we look for those threads. We regularly talk with MDH, and I talk with our regional support to get their ideas and thoughts on what we should do differently. Yeah. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of something that has a lot of moving parts. So we're kind of just going with the flow. But I agree. I think we're doing the best we can given the situation. And we've put all the best mitigation tools in place. And they are working. They're doing what they're supposed to do. I've had my own experiences with it, and I applaud our nurses in the schools because I can't imagine what this must be like for them right now.
It's busy.
I know. I mean, I wish I want to do something for them because they have a lot on their plates. But it is keeping our kids in school, which is way better than what we were doing last year, at this time. So I think if we just keep our morale up, and hopefully you just keep providing us the stuff you're providing us, and hopefully cross our fingers that it doesn't get worse.
So thank you for that, Director Werb. So that support for the nurses, I don't know if Amy can give us an update. So we are using some ESSER funds to try to give them support through clerical. And was it during Ed Minnesota you trained 2 new nurses in? I came in to meet them.
Yeah,
So yes, we are trying. So I don't know if they have an update of where we are with that.
Well, and I also have to say, besides, we're looking at some COVID clerks to help us with some of the calls. That personal touch goes a long way, right? COVID is hard, it's confusing, and when families first hear something, it takes a little while to process that. No different than the information you're processing tonight. And so making those follow-up calls for families, answering those questions, and telling them initially what the situation is, we would use these clerks to help us with those calls, of course with a lot of training first. Yeah.
Mr. Earl?
I know it's out of turn, but it's
No,
kind of
it's all right.
dovetailing. I think 2 thoughts have come to mind. Number one, yes, we're doing everything we can as far as mitigation goes. Talking with families and students, though, and having just received a report about class size and enrollment, we can't say that we're socially distancing all of our students to the best of our ability. And I understand that scheduling and staff all plays into that. We have a staffing shortage. I get it. We know that, I don't know, but I would imagine, we have a large number of students who are vaccinated. We have some who are not, whether due to age or family choice or personal choice. There are variants, so there's no guarantee that that being vaccinated is necessarily going to protect you until possibly you get the booster. But I also think, if we're looking at the class sizes, we have to think about that and what kind of social distancing is happening on our buses. What is it that we can do creatively? We have a flexibility because of our virtual academy that certainly could be used, possibly to help alleviate the staffing shortages, the substitute shortages, the stress, absenteeism of our staff. And, I'm sorry, I'm kind of flipping, but we need to get creative, and we have a lot that we're facing, and we have some tools that we can use. And I'd like to encourage our staff to use that toolbox creatively. What can we do to help ourselves, our families, and our students and our staff? We're not going to be able to control everything, for sure. But in our little niche, there is some hope.
Thank you for that, Director, all members of the board. So it's interesting in the guidance from MDH and MDE regarding this physical distancing, it says to the extent possible. Yeah, so you're right. We are doing the best we can, but it's not the way we had it last year with the cohorting and the A and B. So I don't know if Bernie wants to talk about some additional mitigation strategies when it comes to creativity that the staff looked at to help in some recent cases.
Yeah, a creative one I saw this week was when students are out of the class for whatever reason, shuffling the desk around so they can spread the distance out between the kids. And so just kind of starting to look creatively. And after we have a case, we do try to circle back on what could we have done different in this situation. And we do our calibration, right? That's how we're going to get better and more efficient with our mitigation strategies. And on Fridays, when we meet with principals, I kind of give a summary of this is where we did something really well, and this is where we can improve a little bit more, and let's brainstorm how we can do that. We are always trying to brainstorm to be more creative and improve the health and safety for our students and our staff.
Additional questions or comments?
With the shortages that we're experiencing with food and distribution, are we seeing a continued trend with that? And are we going to be experiencing enough shortage where we might not be able to provide enough meals?
Well, Lisa Ryder's coming up, the creativity and the support of looking at all resources. Some districts, they're going to Costco and Sam's Club. So,
That is true, and we have not yet had to do that. However, it's a continual strain on every single kitchen in being able to respond to, whoever may be absent, yet prepare the meals, and if the food has been shorted, coming up with various different things. The other day I was at a site and noted that, the menu item that was to be served, it was the last lunch, and they were scrounging a little bit to come up with enough of that product or something to substitute that. So it's real. And are we, is it going to get worse? It possibly could. We're starting to experience that, which we've been hearing about previously in months. So I would say that there's a chance that this could just continue and worsen a little for us. At the same time, we do have a very creative team of people trying to always find different ways. One good thing is that we have a very high use of commodity goods, which we do have, and a lot of that is stored already within our freezers. So they're trying very hard to find menu items that make very good use of that and be creative in that fashion.
Other questions or comments? Bertie, I had a question for myself and for the public on testing. I found it personally challenging. At first, I don't know, we had to get tested once in a blue moon or something. Now it seems like whether it's mostly actually it's external activities, but regardless, we find we have to test to meet some sort of obligation or whatever, and frankly, to get tested is challenging. And so I'd be receptive if you have some guidance on that for our community as a whole. I end up go to CVS. I go to CVS's, Walgreens website, et cetera, and nothing's available except maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 1 o'clock, which is, I am pulling kids from school to go do that or whatever. So avenues for folks to find opportunities to get tested easily or as quickly as possible. And, there's at least 3 different forms of tests that I'm aware of that you can get done, and time frames are different on each one of those results and such. But go ahead.
Yeah, correct. Probably one of the best resources to go to if you're looking for COVID testing is the MDH website, and just Google, where can I get a test? The airport, the Blue Ramp, has an amazing setup for saliva COVID screening, which is the gold standard PCR test. And then they also have a site in Bloomington. The Bloomington one is only open Monday through Friday, but those are by appointments. The other, our partnership with Dakota Child and Family Clinic. They do community clinics on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And so their website, you can schedule appointments. And then, of course, you have your pharmacies and your medical providers that also have appointments available.
Okay, thank you. I think in closing, one of the things that was brought up here, and I want to just stress this from the board as a whole, that we are wide open for creative ideas on how to deal with this, Dr. Battle, and I think we need to, I encourage you and your staff to have some brainstorming sessions about this and think a little bit more about the possibilities of what, instead of just suddenly having to, in reactive mode, shut things down and send everybody home overnight, we can maybe find in-between steps. I've heard of multiple things happening other places, so students that are not behind in their work and are doing well or whatever, maybe take a day or two and work from home, and versus the ones that need more in-person treatment can come in, and that mitigates and widens up the classrooms, things like that. So think through some of those options available, please. Okay, thank you. We'll move then to the last piece of our informational component tonight, and that's committee, board appointment, and school assignment reports. We'll begin with committee reports. I'll open up with the legislative committee.
Yep, the legislative committee did not meet in November, but we are working to have a meeting arranged with our legislators and our contact with Ellers and our attorney, kind of like what we did last January before a launch into the proposal of the bill, and making sure that we have our lead authors for that set and answering any questions they all are wanting a consecutive group update, and this would provide that opportunity. And so we're working to get that scheduled here in the next month.
Excellent. Then I will look to the policy committee.
The policy committee met this past Monday and has a number of policies coming forward for board action in December. The committee meets next on Monday, December 20th at 5:30 here at Diamond Head in the Egan Room.
Excellent. And negotiations.
Just a brief report. We have dates set to begin negotiations with the information technology specialists beginning next week, and the district-wide administrators beginning in early December. This would be the last two collective bargaining groups left to negotiate with.
Okay. Then I will move to any other board appointment or school assignment reports. Yes,
Yep, so Intermediate District 917 met earlier this month, and what came out of that was continuing to make movement and identifying priorities for movement in their strategic planning, as well as they will be launching into, I think, negotiations with their bargaining units here shortly as well. And then on October 28th, school board members of 917 and superintendents within Dakota County had met at the Humanities Center in St. Paul that provided a strategic planning update, Grow Your Own with a collaborative effort, and Beyond Critical Race Theory discussion.
Okay. Any other assignment reports? Dr. Connor.
Excuse me, mine is from AMSD. We had a speaker, Dr. Todd Beach, who was very informative at trying to alleviate the confusion of what kids are being taught in school as far as equity, racial equity training and, that type of thing. So anyway, he was stating that for 4th and 5th grade, they're just learning geography and history. He went through, and high school is learning American government citizenship, and that this curriculum is reviewed every 5 to 10 years. And the last time this curriculum was revised was in 2011. So they are currently doing something about that. So that in high school, they're going to just be getting history, geography, and social studies. And they're going to implement this because they're going all the way to 2026. That would be, so they're working on that so that it can be implemented then and probably have to go to the next 10 years. But they want to keep up with the current climate of racial equity in schools right now. So they're trying to say that from kindergarten to third grade, they'll be teaching social studies. 4th to 8th grade, they'll be teaching history and government and global studies. 9th grade to 12th grade, they'll be teaching citizenship, government, history and government, worldwide history, and economics. He wanted to stress that they have a Minnesota team of social studies as a committee with 41 people on it, and they're all diverse, that are going to be implementing these new school curriculums. And he wanted to make sure that people know that though they're teaching ethnic studies and diversity, we are not teaching critical race critical race theory in our public schools. That is taught in college. It's not included K through 12, and it was developed in 1970. It's a totally different subject. So he just wanted to clear that up because he said that in other districts, in many districts, a lot of parents are getting confused and don't want things changed and are wondering what's being taught to their kids. And so he was trying to clear up that confusion, which I thought was really good. He said that their benchmark is to apply this study to the grade levels for all the classes that I mentioned, and then the standard is just the ideas that they're going to address with diversity, and then they'll worry about the curriculum and measure that to the standard. So it was just a very good and clear-cut presentation. And so if parents want to know more about what their kids are being taught or more about what I said, you can find that on the AMSD website under Imagine Minnesota. And that is a website for the community. Oh, they're also going to be trying to include 11 tribal nations into this curriculum also, so that there's attention and all equity for all students, and greater attention to continued learning and transparency to the community. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
I have a.
Go ahead, Dr.
On Tuesday evening, November 16th, Director Alt and I participated in the MSBA Delegate Assembly pre-workshop via Zoom. During the workshop, we reviewed the 20-plus proposals that will be discussed and voted on by MSBA delegates at next month's Delegate Assembly, which is currently planned to be held in person in Minneapolis on Friday, December 3rd and Saturday, December 4th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, that'll end the information part of our meeting tonight. We'll move into the business component, beginning with our consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved for separate consideration. This time I will ask if there is any item on tonight's consent agenda that board members wish to remove for separate consideration. Seeing no indication of that, I will ask for a motion for tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Director Hume, and second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Director Werb. All those in favor to approve the motion for tonight's consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any not in favor indicate by saying nay. Hearing none, tonight's consent agenda passes unanimously. We'll move now to new business. Beginning with the first item is to approve the full year, fiscal year 21 audit. Speaking on this, we Lisa Ryder, Executive Director of Business Services. Welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you. On November 10th, in a workshop environment, you heard from Clifton Larson Allen, Principal Dennis Hugavine, who spoke to you about the results of our 2020-2021 financial audit. And so tonight before you is an action item for approval of this report. Once the board should approve this audit, then we would be placing the electronic copies out on our website and also submitting them to Ellers for distribution to our bondholders. So that's how that information is distributed. Additionally, I would like to point out a few items. There are three main components of the materials that were provided to us. The one that is the easiest read is going to be the executive audit summary, and that is a report that's put together actually by the audit firm in kind of just pulls together the highlights of the information that someone who wants a quick read can get, right? Additionally, they include a legislative summary, which is also very helpful to understand what is coming and also what may have just been recently approved. Additionally, then, once you've seen that part of the materials, then there is an annual comprehensive financial report. It looks daunting. It's a very thick book. However, if you begin to look at it, the introductory section, the financial section, and the required supplementary section that are within it have some really good narratives to kind of give you a sense of exactly what it is that we have happening within our district. As highlights for the audit, I just want to reiterate the fact that our financial audit for the 2020-2021 year included an unmodified audit report, which means a clean audit. And there were no compliance issues that were noted in the process of the audit. One material weakness in internal controls was noted and has action items attached to that. There are no single audit findings in this year's audit, no legal compliance findings, and our general fund unassigned fund balance did improve by $2,910,913. With that, I'll read the recommendation that the Board of Education approve the financial audit report for 2020-2021.
Thank you. I will look for a motion for the recommendation in front of us.
So moved.
Moved by Director Connor. A second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Director Chester. I will open it up for any comments or questions on the motion that we're now looking at. Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in agreement to approve the motion to approve the full year 2021 audit indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any not in favor indicate by saying nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Next, we will move to a recommendation to adopt a resolution authorizing issuance of a certificate of election and directing the school district clerk to perform other election-related duties. Again, Director Ryder.
Thank you. At our last meeting, November 10th, we canvassed the election. The next step is for this process to be implemented, authorizing the issuance of that certificate of election. And then once the clerk performs the duties and the proper materials are received, then there can be a follow-up oath of office for the individual for the remainder of the term. So with that, the recommendation is that the resolution authorizing issuance of certificate of election and directing the school district clerk to perform other election-related duties be approved.
Excellent. I will look for a motion on the recommendation in front of us.
So moved.
Moved by Director Alt and seconded by Director Werb. Any questions or comments on the motion in front of us? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any of those not in favor indicate by saying nay. Not hearing any. The motion passes unanimously. And now we will move to approve on a first reading basis changes to policy 104, school district mission statement. Dr. Battle.
Chair Miller and directors of the board, tonight I bring forward for a first reading changes to policy 104, school district mission statement. The board approved the strategic plan vision statement and core values during its meeting on May 27, 2021. We are replacing the former statement of core values. So under section 4, we have replaced them with our new core values. And also under our vision statement, section 5, we have our new vision statement. We also made a cross-reference to Policy 105, the Equity, Access, and Excellence in Education. With that, I do ask the board to approve that Policy 104 is being updated to reflect the approved vision statement and core values. The Policy Review Committee reviewed the Policy 104 on November 15th, 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. I will look for a motion on the recommendation in front of us.
So moved.
Moved by Director Chester, and a second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Connor. I will open it up for any questions or comments on the motion for the first reading of changes to Policy 104. Okay, hearing none, we'll take a vote on the motion in front of us. All those indicating in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any not in favor indicate by saying nay. Not hearing any, the motion passes unanimously. Our final order of business on our agenda tonight will be to adjourn to a closed session. We will need to do so through a vote, which will take in just a minute. I'll just indicate to anybody watching at home at this point, after we adjourn, the recording will end. A closed session is a method agreed upon by state law to allow us to discuss items of sensitive and individual nature, and therefore this will not be part of the recording this evening. I will take a motion to the action to adjourn to a closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Director Hume, and a second, please.
Second?
Seconded by Director Alt. All those in favor to adjourn indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any not in favor indicate by saying nay. Hearing no nays, the motion passes unanimously.